talking about if had Jaco Pastorius lived, and of course he did the Jaco video back in the day, would Jaco have gravitated towards the extended range bass? My guess is yes, because Jaco was always into new things and new sounds. I know he took Joni Mitchell's very first acoustic amp, and he was always working with pedals and things like that. So I think when the extended range bass became a little bit more practical and well designed, better designed, I should say, I think Jaco would have gone 5 and 6 string. What say you, Jerry?
I say no.
Okay, well there goes that theory. And why do you say Jaco would have stuck with 4?
Well, he loved the bass, the pure bass and the instrument itself.
Okay.
And the 4 strings make you play like a bass player.
Right.
Because you have less to work with and you're more foundational.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different head. It's very hard to play 6 strings with taste. I feel very few people can play tastefully normal bass parts or even extended bass parts with taste. The sound is different, that low B string or the high C string.
Okay.
It gives you just a different it's a different instrument.
Well, let me introduce you to David C. Gross, who is a 6-string bass player. And I've got to tell you, interesting, I never played the 6-string bass. I played a 5-string bass in the 90s and 80s when it was required and things. And the 6-string bass, we've talked with Dave Swift. David, you've talked with Anthony Jackson, and they feel that the real bass guitar is the 6-string guitar because, as we know from history, Leo wanted to sell Fender bass to upright bass players to, reduce the wear and tear, and it was easier. Mobility was a lot easier. Hence, the bass guitar was 4 strings so he could sell it to bass players. But folks such as David Swift and Anthony Jackson maintain that the true bass guitar is the 6-string bass. Now, my partner David C. Gross is quite the 6-string bass player, and we've been playing with pink strings and all. We've been playing gigs around town, and when David and I did a couple of blues gigs together, folks were astounded how David played blues on the 6-string bass without, I would say, being overbearing on the upper or lower register. So the 6-string bass, I think, can be played just like any other bass, David.
It can be.
Well, the thing is, the way I look at it, particularly from a studio perspective, is within the first 3 frets, from low B to high C, you have 2 octaves of D. So for me, it made sense. And a lot of, back in the day, Sony used to do a lot of karaoke in Japan. And one of the ways they were able to do this as abundantly as they did is they would call me to change keys. So if something was in, let's say, A, they want to bring it down to, let's say, an E flat or something, I could do it that way. But I think the key for me in particular, and remember, I was one of Willie's subs, so he wouldn't be thinking that I'm going to slop up the joint. I mean, Harold Wheeler loved, the fact that I could read his charts. And the thing is, once you were, as long as you grew up playing bass, I would say that for me, I hear it that way, and visually I see it that way. Victor Gaskin used to be my instructor, and he loved when I would do Bach cello suites and go, So for me, I always thought low. As a matter of fact, on this 6-string, I have a double stomp on the low B. I can actually get a G. Now, of course, it will make you go to the bathroom. However, it's a great low note.
Yeah, it's a great low note. For sure.
So can we say that the 6-string bass is more dependent on the player and how he or she approaches it, as opposed to the instrument?
Every instrument. So, it's funny when you mentioned all the ideas about playing 6-string is great. But one thing with playing 4-string, it makes you become more creative. And creativity comes from a lack of something. So you become, I would say you become less creative playing six string because you have so much available to you, and you miss that struggle of having to invert a line and play that, go down as low as you can, and then jump back up, play an octave higher to have the line make sense. And it makes beautiful music, as opposed to everything that you can hear going a scale line all the way down to the bottom, as opposed to going part way down and jumping back up to the middle. It's more musical and more lyrical and more, has a groove to it that it's more, you can get more uniqueness out of it, as opposed to the same old thing. You can hit a whole 2 octaves. Yeah, that's great, easily. But the challenge of making music comes from, I say creativity comes from a lack of something, as opposed to having an abundance of something.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. We've been doing these shows and video series about me defending the 80s. And one of the reasons I defend the 1980s as a generation, pop music, jazz, rock, rhythm and blues, etc., is not so much the artists and the songs. Okay, Sly Stone spoke to his generation, Prince spoke to his generation, James Brown spoke to his generation when it came to funk and things like that. But because all these things came to fruition, such as the DX7 and electric basses, their sound improved with active electronics and onboard electronics. Now we could hear the bass. It was not a low hum on the bandstand or on the recording studio. Now with the DX7, you could do string arrangements and play them in the bar. You didn't, it wasn't string arrangements now, or orchestral arrangements weren't just for rock stars who can afford an orchestra. Now the bar band guy could go out there and do sorts.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's this whole idea of digitalization and synchronization and synthetic synthesizers and drum machines has leveled the playing field where anybody can make music, has the tools to make music, and depending upon how creative the person is with them, and have the level of they want to invest in natural sound as opposed to synthetic sound. It's a matter of where you are, what you're about doing. There's a lot of things involved. It all comes down to the individual.
When you did the Jaco video, I mean, so many people cite that now, and of course it's on YouTube, it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous. When anybody wants to know about Jaco, they go to that video. When you did that, I know Jaco wasn't in the best of health then, but did you have a sense that you were capturing history when you were doing that video, or was?
Oh yeah, I knew what was going on. He came to me, and I saw in him what I saw in me, with the problems I had all my life. So we it's like nothing had to be said. We just took care of business and got it done. It's just as simple as that. And I, like he like everybody else, they heard the desperation in my sound, the energy that I put out, and he became a fan, based upon that. I didn't know. And when I heard him for the first time in 1974, I said, "Damn, somebody put the work in," because he wasn't playing anything that was not that I hadn't imagined to play, but he did it. Right. So it was cool. Then I find out 7 years later, that I'm his inspiration. And I got that too. I understood that. So he came to me like I had a feeling of who he was and what was about and where he was now and the troubles he's gone through and the depression. Everything I've lived, what he lived with. It wasn't a stranger to me. So we got it done. I was in trouble myself at the time. I talk about that in my book too.
Yeah. The thing that I think was most poignant for me is when you had said, "Jaco, you're this," and he said, "Hey, get me a gig." That broke my heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. That's